Hello everyone and welcome back into the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, and for our third segment of today's show, we'll be previewing another game taking place out west between the Spurs and the Lakers. But bear in mind, I'm not the biggest follower of the NBA. I am kind of someone who likes to keep updated with things happening around the league, especially in terms of trade rumors as we approach the deadline. But I am still someone who is a little bit of a novice in terms of truly getting into the intricacies of the NBA. But when I saw this matchup, when I saw what was happening in the league, what with the Lakers and the Spurs coming into this one, I had to say, hey, I'm going to bite the bullet and preview this one, even though I might sound sometimes like I'm talking out of my ass here. But I still think that it's going to be an exciting segment, my first ever basketball preview segment here on the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it, rip off the Band-Aid. So obviously, we talked about the Rams and how their game has affected by the LA wildfires. The Los Angeles Lakers might have been impacted even more heavily. They've had postponements over these last couple of weeks, have not played since last Tuesday, I believe, a road loss to the Dallas Mavericks, and now ultimately, Crypto.com Arena should be full for tonight's game between them and the San Antonio Spurs. But the surprising Lakers really have had to lean on both LeBron James and Anthony Davis as their bell cows, really. And while Anthony Davis is proving that he is one of the league's best players, this is a 40-year-old LeBron James we're talking about, and while he still has glimpses of greatness within him, and I know he's still going to be one of the best players on a basketball court every night he steps out there, I do think that this game presents a unique challenge for both of them in terms of their front court action. On the Spurs side of things, this is a team that was hanging tough in the play-in picture over the first couple of months of the season, but are coming in off a 3-game losing streak, really got embarrassed by Milwaukee Bucks. Victor Wembanyama, most of all, in terms of how he played against Giannis Antetokounmpo. But this presents another challenge in which I feel he might be able to win offensively against Anthony Davis going into this matchup. But most importantly, where they are in the standings, Lakers are 6th, so ultimately safe and secure for now. In the playoff picture, the Spurs have fallen out of the play-in picture due to their 3-game skid, but ultimately this one should be a good one, setting up ultimately to kind of take away the pressures of the LA wildfire for a lot of LA Lakers fans getting into the rhythm of watching their prized team take the floor night in, night out. And my thoughts and prayers are also with a lot of these LA players. I've heard that around the league, a lot of these players' homes have been affected by the wildfire, so I'm praying for them as well. Hopefully they can put out a great effort on the court for their fans tonight. But let's talk about certain aspects of this game that really stand out to me. Ultimately talking about when we think about fascinating center matchups in today's NBA, Victor Wembanyama against Anthony Davis, especially on the offensive side of things, really is perhaps the most intriguing one that you might find on a given night. Wembanyama averaging just over 25 points, 48% shooting from the field, 10.8 rebounds, averaging a lot of blocks as well. Truly a spectacular player. Really high volume offensively as well. Still want to see him improve a little bit defensively perhaps, but because of his length and size, you can't necessarily complain if he has a down defensive night, because you know what he's capable of when he's on both sides of the floor. And I don't necessarily think that game against Milwaukee Bucks was indicative of what he can be both offensively and defensively. It's just that he ran into a juggernaut in Giannis, who matched up with him pretty well. But ultimately, heading into this one against Anthony Davis, who's also having a career year as well, 28.8 points from the field, 51.9 shooting from the field as well, 11.9 rebounds, really goes to show that this is a big man's league right now. And your big man really is the focal point of your attack if you're an NBA team. And these two teams, yes, might not be playing the best collective basketball, but still are set foundationally at the most important position. And they could both be in the reckoning for playing tournament spots by season's end. So it really is important that in these specific matchups, your guy wants to win. And so that's why I'm really intrigued ultimately by the nature of these two big men in this one. And I feel like defensively, I feel Wemby might have the advantage in this one just because of the nature of this front court and how the Lakers might play. And it's really going to fall on the shoulders of the perimeter guys like Reeves, like Max Christie to really step up. But ultimately, I think it's going to come down to these two guys down low when they're both on offense and how, if Wemby is winning the battle, Anthony Davis reacts on the offensive himself. But then let's talk about these role players as well. Let's talk about the struggles some of them have had, especially for the Spurs in these past couple of weeks. Let's talk about Devin Vassell, who can be an interesting piece here for this Spurs team, and someone who I really think they rely a lot upon for his perimeter prowess. He only has 14 points as an average in terms of his last 10 games, shooting 37% from the field and 22% from beyond the arc. So I do feel like if you're the Spurs, you might want to have some modicum of perimeter output as well. Victor Wembanyama can stretch the field himself, but you don't necessarily want to pressure him too much, have him creating too many shots, getting up there in terms of volume for him as well, because you do want him to affect the game down low as well, which you can do, but ultimately when your teammates are struggling to get high from the perimeter, this might be what he might want to do going forward. But you do need, if your team with such a unique big man as Victor Wembanyama, someone who can also exploit when he gets down low. Because I do think there needs to be that aspect of this offense where you can drive and kick. And yes, Chris Paul brings that as well. But I do feel like if you get stagnant from behind the perimeter, it can all fall on Wemby to go out there and stretch the field himself. So I do feel like some of these perimeter guys for San Antonio do need to step up in this one to have much success. Then for the Lakers, some guy who's getting hot in the perimeter for them has been Austin Reeves. And I really think the Lakers go how Austin Reeves go, because he is someone who can distribute the basketball at a high level, understands that sometimes he's going to be the outlet for both LeBron and Anthony Davis when they want to drive and kick. And he's really assumed the role of point general very well, both in the Darvin Ham era and the J.J. Redick era, especially because of his swashbuckling style of play. He's not afraid to drive the ball himself. He's a solid, I shall say, three-point shooter. And ultimately, I feel like LeBron and Anthony Davis are starting to trust him a lot more as well offensively. And so, on any given night, I do feel like Austin Reeves can be the hot hand. 20 or more in 6 of his last 10 games, and ultimately he can be a security blanket if the matchup down low does not go well for either James or Davis in this one. And as you can see from LeBron's stats, he's more than willing to pass the basketball. 8.8 assists per game, but ultimately the question here is going to be, right, when LeBron is on the court, how do the Lakers get affected? Because early in the season, right, the debate was about how LeBron's presence on the court impacted the Lakers both positively and negatively, and how his impact when he wasn't on the court impacted the Lakers as well. And as we saw, when he was on the court, they really were not playing very well or very efficiently. And then when he was off it, they were playing much more efficiently. But then, when you look at his stats and the way he's buying into this team identity under J.J. Redick, I feel like he can still add value in certain moments, especially for someone like an Austin Reeves, who is perhaps your most reliable perimeter player. And yes, LeBron still got it in all 3 phases of this game. Offensively, he can still shoot the 3. He's still willing to drive the basketball, get to the rim, and ultimately, he's not necessarily a liability defensively. But there's something to be said about that stat that really could impact the Lakers going forward should LeBron see his usage rate steadily climb. And so that's what I want to see in a game against a team like San Antonio, where you match up pretty well, but down low you might struggle a little bit against the unique play of Victor. So that's where I want to see this Lakers team really figure it out. And that's what ultimately Greg Popovich and the San Antonio Spurs team might be willing to exploit a little bit more. But ultimately, when I think of this game, yes, it may not necessarily be the most important for these two teams down the stretch, but it is kind of a benchmark moment for how these two teams' seasons are going. When I think about the Spurs, I still think they need a couple pieces around Wemby to truly get to the point where they're consistently going to be either playing or Western Conference contenders. And then the Lakers kind of have been the pleasant surprise for me this season in the NBA, seeing as to how J.J. Redick coming out of the booth into this head coaching position really gave me pause for LA. But now, seeing what he's trying to build here, seeing how he's trying to get the best out of his perimeter players, a guy like Reeves, very similar to how potentially he played. So I'm really excited to see how this game transpires. And yes, maybe both of these teams make the postseason. Maybe one of these teams does. Maybe both of them don't make the postseason. But I'm really intrigued because this game is not just, a benchmark moment for these teams, but for the nature of the NBA. When you have two big men in Victor Wembanyama and Anthony Davis who can really impact how your team plays, you're a special team. And both of these guys are still young. Yes, Anthony Davis seemingly ages a lot faster than people think he does, perhaps. But Wemby is still young, and Anthony Davis still has a lot of good years ahead of them. Whether or not they're going to be with LeBron is a question that's going to have to be answered in the immediate future. But I do feel like this game is going to still be fascinating and thrilling from start to finish because of the nature of these big men, because of the similarities between these two teams. But ultimately, whenever we talk about LA, we have to talk about the Wildfires, and my thoughts and prayers are genuinely with the people of LA and the LA sports fans tonight, as both of their teams, football and basketball, play some high-stakes games. But let me know what you think about these games and the comments below, because coming next week, we're going to be reacting a little bit belatedly to an NFL head coach firing that took place in Las Vegas, specifically that of Antonio Pierce. I'll be right back to break it down right after this short break.